You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. 1 hour 90.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, the official podcast of the Love the Darts magazine. I'm Alex Moss, and once again I'm joined by my co-host Burton DeWitt. Burton, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing well too, and what a show we've got lined up for you this week. Last week we didn't have any guests for you, but hopefully we've made up for that this week with 3 guests on the podcast this week. Kevin Pater, Ryan Searle and Ryan Meikle, 3 PDC tour card holders, all on the show this week, so look forward to that over the course of the episode. But we're going to kick off things this week by looking back at the Auckland Darts Masters, which took place over the weekend in New Zealand, and a first TV title for Kyle Anderson, beating Corey Cadby 11-10 in the final. Many didn't expect that to be the final going into the tournament, but for Kyle Anderson now, he's followed up that first Pro Tour title a couple of weeks ago with his first TV title. What do you think he has to do now from here to become a possibility for next year's Premier League?
I mean, of course we had to ask that. That's why we put it in there, because I think that is the next question. Now that he's won a TV title, which none of the other people who are being talked about to be Premier League debutants have. Daryl Gurney made a final and played brilliantly in it, as well as 2 TV semifinals this year. Gerwyn Price has made a TV final and a ranking match. He's actually made 2 TV finals. Benito Van de Pas still hasn't made a TV final. Joe Cullen hasn't made a TV final. Kyle Anderson made one and won one. It wasn't like it was handed to him. He had to beat the world number 2 in the first round. He had to beat the world number 8 in the semifinals. He had to beat his country's best ever player in the quarterfinal, and then had to beat the world youth champ in the final against the darts in the final leg. Obviously, he has to duplicate this multiple times, not necessarily winning a title, but he's going to have a deep run at the Grand Slam, the Grand Prix, a deep run at the Europeans, a couple of these TV events, maybe make it to the quarterfinals or semifinals of the World Championship. But now he has the confidence he can do it. He's won 2 titles in the space of 8 days, and this one with a lot of pressure on him to do it. I think that he has that chance now if he can push on from here.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I think, like you, this win has put him right in contention. I think if we're being honest, going into the tournament, if we had to pick our Premier League lineup and players that we thought were in contention for it, Kyle Anderson probably wouldn't be a name that we would suggest. But this win, his first TV title, and the players he's beat along the way, the performances that he's put in, has put him right in contention. But I think the big thing for him now is replicating it. Maybe not, as you say, winning another title, but putting some good runs together. I was before we started this podcast, I was looking at his TV tournament results in the PDC. He's had 22 TV tournaments now, and in 7 of those he's reached the quarterfinals or better, which is almost a third strike rate, which is not too bad for a player in the top 32. But then when I looked at ranking TV tournaments, it's just 2 in 13. So that's really an area that he's going to have to try and improve on over the next few months. There's some big TV tournaments ranking-wise coming up. Of course, the onus at the moment will be on the 2 World Series events coming up in Melbourne and Perth over the next 2 weeks. But after that, it will be the big TV ranking majors, the World Grand Prix, the World Championship. Not sure if this win gets him in the Grand Slam for the first time. I'm going to have to check that. But he's going to be in some big tournaments for the rest of the year, and if he can put a couple of decent runs together, then his name's certainly going to be in contention to get a Premier League spot next year.
Yeah, so it doesn't get him in the Grand Slam, although he's definitely in contention the way he's playing right now if he can do it on one of the other events. But the person he beat in the final, Corey Cadby, along the way, Cadby beat Peter Wright, beat Michael Smith, beat Phil Taylor, but he did also rub some people the wrong way with some of his celebrations and antics on stage, and we'll get to Phil Taylor's response in a second as well. But do you think Cadby's celebrations and emotions are too over the top, or are they a breath of fresh air to see someone as lively as he is?
Well, for the second part of that question, really, is it a breath of fresh air? Well, not really. We've seen Michael van Gerwen do it in maybe not as much as Corey Cadby in the last few years, but we've seen him do those sorts of celebrations when he's hit some big shots and hit some big scores. So it's not really a breath of fresh air seeing that on the big stage. In terms of his emotions being over the top, well, there's a lot of people that say that in sport at the moment, they're killing really the emotions and the characters out of the game. But I think a player like Corey Cadby, he could be one of the big characters in in darts if he does move over and join the main tour and get in these big tournaments. We've seen what he can do. We've seen what he can produce in the few tournaments that he's played in so far. So I think he will be a big character, and I don't think the celebrations are over the top. As I say, we've seen it before with Van Gerwen. It might rub up a few players the wrong way, but at the end of the day, they've got to focus really on their own game, and if they're playing to the best of their abilities and hitting the sort of averages and the scores that they want, then they won't really be worrying about the celebrations that Corey's doing.
Yeah, I for the most part agree. I think he needs to learn how to channel his emotions a little bit better, because it can be bad for him results-wise, because it's not just that he's celebrating big scores. He's also very vocally upset at himself with bad visits. And if players are going to learn how to take advantage of that and how to turn that against him and make his negative emotions overtake him and beat himself. And that's where it could be bad for him. If he can learn how to not necessarily not be emotional, because Robert Thornton's made a great career out of being a very emotional player, both, well, in his case, more negative with his celebrations. But he doesn't let people get in his head. Corey Cadby, it's very easy to tell when he's down on himself. That can be bad for him. I don't think his celebrations are over the top. I think it's his anti-celebrations that could lead some of the more skilled gamesmen to really attack him and beat him.
One of the players over the years who's been one of the masters of the mind games, and that's Phil Taylor, but he wasn't able to get the better of Corey Cadby in Auckland, losing out to Corey in the semi-finals. And there's been a bit of talk on social media over the last couple of days about Phil's antics during the semi-final, trying to mimic Corey, who was, I think his shirt was sticking to him. He was trying to get a bit of air to him there. But what did you make of them? Was he just having a bit of fun with the crowd? What was your real thoughts on how Phil acted in that semi-final?
I don't know what to say, because I called out Phil Taylor last year in the match play final, I believe it was. Or was it the Grand Slam? No, it was the match play final, when he was doing the Icelandic chomp. I found that to be out of line. But this is just an exhibition tournament. Yes, it means a lot to Corey Cadby, and it means a lot to Kyle Anderson. It means a lot to the local players. But it's an exhibition tournament. It doesn't affect the rankings. It doesn't, other than to qualify for the World Series final, which in and of itself is not a ranking event. I think he was just having a bit of fun, interacting with the crowd, part mocking, but also just having a bit of banter and laughs with the crowd. I didn't have a problem with it. I could see it being out of order if this were a ranking event, and that's why I thought it was out of order at the match play. But I didn't have a problem with it in this particular situation.
Yeah, I've got to agree, and I think that the main thing I really got from Phil Taylor's performances over the weekend weren't really to do with the antics, but was just the way he performed and the dip in standard from the World Match Play a few weeks ago when he won it for a record 16th time, and it just sort of shows in this snapshot of the last two TV tournaments really why he's retiring at the end of the year. A lot of people after he won the World Match Play were going, are you really going to retire after winning that? Well, after seeing how he's performed in Auckland, it's the way that he's not able to have that consistent standard anymore. That's why he's retiring at the end of the year. But yeah, I've got to agree, it's a non-ranking event, it's an exhibition. He was getting involved with the crowd, and at the end of the day it's a bit of harmless fun. I'm sure Corey, if they had a chat backstage afterwards, if he did have any problems with it, I think Phil would have been quick to say we were just having a laugh with the crowd, really.
Now, one of the players who went out the first round was Peter Wright. He went out to Corey Cadby 6-4, and again didn't produce his best standard. That's off of a performance the previous week or 2 weeks earlier in Blackpool, where while he made the finals, wasn't at its best, wasn't at the best in Shanghai or Las Vegas. Has Peter Wright's form peaked and since then dropped since the beginning of the year, or can he get back to what he was doing back in March and April?
It's a tricky one. We're talking about a player who's only a couple of weeks ago got to the final of one of the biggest tournaments on the calendar, and then he's gone out first round in a non-ranking World Series event. But yeah, I think there is some troubling signs with Peter Wright's game at the moment. Even though he did get to that final in Blackpool, there are some troubling signs for him. He struggled on the way to get into that final. There were some ropey performances on the way there, and his performance against Corey Cadby was well below his best. So I think there is something that he needs to look at. Has he lost the desire to win these TV tournaments after getting that first one and coming close to winning another one? I think that's one of the big questions he's got to ask himself. He's done a lot of chopping and changing with his darts to try and keep his mind on it, but I think there is something he needs to look at really with his game, because over the next couple of weeks, of course, Michael van Gerwen's not in any of these World Series events in New Zealand and Australia, and if there was a time for Peter Wright to win a World Series event, you've got to say, with his biggest rival out of the way, this is the opportunity to do it. But he's got another 2 chances over the next 2 weeks to address those issues, and hopefully Freeman will be able to get back to that early 2017 form and get another TV title under his belt before the players head back to the UK.
I think his confidence might be shot right now. He was not confident that entire week in Blackpool, even though, as we've said, he reached the final. Very likely should have gone out first round to James Wilson. If James Wilson just been able to hit one double in those last few legs, might have been enough to have crippled Peter Wright's chances. And he took his chances after that, made it to the final, but never was at his best. Hasn't really been at his best since the last European Tour event about a month, 6 weeks ago. But even that was surrounded by some indifferent play over the previous few weeks in both the World Cup and some of the floor events. I don't know. I think he's still in a way reeling from the loss in the Premier League final. I think that dented him. I think he was able to push it to the back of his mind by going and playing the floor events the following week, playing those European Tour events and getting a few more titles. But I think it's put some doubts in his head that he might have thought that he had exercised at the UK Open. And this is his best chance. If he can win one of these tournaments in the next 2 weeks, okay, fine, Michael van Gerwen isn't there, and that is still something that he hasn't been able to right. But at least he would have won a title in a tournament that Phil Taylor was in a tournament that Gary Anderson was in, when almost all the top players were there. And he has 2 more chances, and he really needs to win one of them, I think, for his confidence.
Peter Wright's going to be in Melbourne this week for the inaugural Melbourne Darts Masters, and it's a virtually identical lineup to the one we had in Auckland. And we're going to be looking ahead to that World Series event. But first, we're going to get into our first of 3 interviews this week, and that is with one of the new tour card holders this year and runner-up on the development tour last year, Ryan Searle. Ryan, thanks for joining us on the podcast. You began playing in the PDC in the Challenge Tour back in 2015 and had some good runs, reaching a final, semi-final, quarter-final. Decided against giving Q School a go the next year. Did those successes not convince you to give it a go the following year?
No, I always felt like I had to finish top 2 to... Obviously, you finish top 2 and you get your tour card. I didn't want to finish outside of there, and I didn't feel like you would be sort of good enough to make it on the tour if you didn't finish in the top 2. That was the way I kind of looked at it. So I gave Q School a miss.
And last year you were back on the Challenge Tour and you won 2 titles and ended up finishing in that top 2, runner-up behind Rob Cross and earned an automatic tour card. How did it feel to achieve that?
Yeah, I was over the moon. And especially look at what Rob Cross is doing now as well. To finish second behind him and wasn't too far behind him. So yeah, I was really happy with that.
What was it like during that year on the Challenge Tour last year and going to all the tournaments, as I say, winning a couple of titles? Did you feel like you had the game and you were going to finish in that top 2?
I felt way more comfortable after playing the season before. I seemed to feel like I just settled in a lot better, and I knew more what it was about. So yeah, I felt good, and it was nice just to. I lost in the final of one on my first year on the Challenge Tour, and then to finally win one on my second season was a big moment for me. Actually, I think it was Mark Durbridge, wasn't it? Was it Mark Durbridge I beat?
Yeah, it might
my first one.
And now you've played on the Challenge Tour and now the Pro Tour as well. What are the differences you've seen between the 2 tours, playing on both of them?
On the Pro Tour, you just can't afford to miss. Like, whenever you get a chance, you've got to take it. Like, the margins are so fine. Like, one dart in a match can change the whole match. Whereas the Challenge Tour, it was a bit, I would say easier, but it was like a bit more leeway you have with like your finishing and that. So I'd say that's the main two differences.
Moving on to this year, you've moved on to the Pro Tour, but heading into it, did you make any changes to your practice routine, your lifestyle, to maybe try and enhance your chances of making that smooth transition over from the Challenge Tour?
I've definitely done a lot more practicing than what I used to for the Challenge Tour. With the Challenge Tour, I used to sort of practice sort of 2 weeks just running up to it. Do a lot more practice than what I used to, but now on the Pro Tour, you need to be practicing a lot every day, really, because you're playing people who in the top 8, they're playing top darts every day. They're on TV a lot, they're away abroad a lot playing. So you'd be playing people that do it for a living. You've got to be putting in the mega effort, otherwise you're not really going to make it.
So how many hours would you say you're putting in now that you're on the Pro Tour?
I try and do 2 hours a day, but I've got 2 young kids, so it doesn't always happen. It's not always that easy to just go and without them. I don't mind that, but as the Pro Tour's coming up or anything like that, I do try and make more effort to do a solid 2 hours and then go from there, really.
And in your 4th event on the Pro Tour, you reached the semi-finals of one of the UK Open qualifiers. How much belief did that give you that you maybe belonged on the PDC Pro Tour and at such an early stage in your tour card, and that you could mix it with the top players?
I always feel like if I can just get a few games under my belt and get going, that I can beat anyone, really. I always feel that, and beat Dave Chisnell in the quarterfinal. That was a really good game, and I was just sort of saying in my head when it was stood behind him because it was on the live stream. I think that was my first ever game on the live stream, and I was just saying to myself, like, you belong here, you can do this, and I managed to get to the semi-final. So I was over the moon at that, especially with it being, was it the fourth UK Open qualifier, I think it was.
Yeah.
So after the first weekend where I didn't do too well, I lost to Michael Smith, I think it was, then Gary Anderson. I think the next one was Cristo Reyes. So I was losing to top players each time. But playing Gary Anderson was strange for me because he's been my favourite dart player for ages, and I've been used to cheering him on the telly. And then the next minute, I'm stood next to him playing against him, and it was a bit, I was a bit of in awe of him. So that was, it's taken a bit of getting used to playing all these players. But I think it's finally starting to click now. So we'll just see where it goes.
That run to the semi-finals helped you qualify for your first PDC major, the UK Open, where you reached the last 32. What was it like playing in a PDC major for the first time?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, to come in as one of the seeds as well took a bit of pressure off because I was already in the money, which was nice. I had my dad, my granddad, and my girlfriend came to watch when I played against Mick McGowan. I was mega nervous, real nervous. I don't normally get over nervous like that, but I had a huge amount of support as well, which helped. So I was just glad to get over the line in that game, really.
And soon after Minehead, you qualified for your first European Tour event of the year in Germany. How did you find the experience of them playing on the European Tour for the first time?
I absolutely loved it. I think I kind of probably let the occasion get to me a bit. I've never played in front of a crowd or anything like that before. I wasn't overly happy with how I played, but I think I learned a lot from that, and hopefully I'll be able to prove that when I play in Maastricht in a few weeks' time.
And since then, you mentioned that one that you've qualified for Maastricht there. You've only qualified for one other European Tour event through these UK qualifiers. How tough are these qualifiers, and what's the standard like in them as we don't get to see them on the stream?
They're real tough. I mean, I've lost in the couple finals to qualify, both to Mark Webster, who's finishing. I've never played anyone who finishes like he does. Unbelievable finishing. The standard is it's real good. I mean, I think you get players that don't have tour cards that are allowed in as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you sometimes see a few of those qualify as well, which just shows the standard that even people that don't have full-time tour cards can play like.
earlier this month, you made it to the semi-finals of Players' Championship 18, beating Daryl Gurney, one of the form players at the moment, along the way. How pleasing was that run for you and the timing of it as we head into the final few months of the year now?
Yeah, it's funny because on the Friday, a couple of days before that weekend, I bent one of the points on my darts. I didn't have any spares and I didn't have a chance to get any new ones and change them. So I had to use these longer points.
Oh, okay.
And they were going all right in practice. I wasn't overly happy, but they were going all right. And then I played in the first Euro Tour on a Friday night, and I did not play very well at all. And I could tell sometimes as I was throwing them, sometimes they would wobble through the air, and they were sticking in the board a bit to the left hand side, which I don't do, normally. Mm-hmm. And then on Saturday, I played. I think it was Rossvale on the live stream. I think I played all right in that game, and then lost to Ronnie Hybrex. He played real well. I went 2-1 up, 2-0 up. Lost my throw, and then he went nuts. He was hitting absolutely everything. And then on the Sunday, I managed to have a decent run. It was nice to beat Daryl Gurney. Obviously, him being in the form he was in. He gave me a few chances in that game. To be fair, he missed a couple of doubles, but you just got to take the chances you're given, really. And the game after Daryl Gurney, I was 3-0 down to William O'Connor and come back 1-6 legs on the trot. And I find now that I wouldn't say I used to give up when I was behind, but I find now I've got way more of a fighting spirit to fight back into a game. You can't just give up.
I suppose I've got to ask, really, you had to use the longer points over that weekend. Did you manage to get the darts fixed, or are you sticking with the longer points now?
No, I got them fixed as soon as I got as soon as I got home on the Sunday night. I was straight on and ordered up some new points back to my old ones. So I'm looking forward to master it now and getting stuck in.
As you say, you're back on the European tour next month. What are you hoping to try and achieve though before the end of your first year on the main tour, and what are your long-term goals really in your darts career?
With Maastricht, I'd like to have a little run in Maastricht, to be honest. In Germany, the crowd were amazing. The atmosphere was awesome. I'm pretty sure it'll be the same in Maastricht. So to do well on a European tour is tough, because obviously you play your first game, which is against other qualifiers, and then you're straight in against the seeds. So I mean, you don't really want Van Gogh or anyone like that if you can try to avoid that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And this year, as far as this year's gone so far, I'm over the moon with how I've done. I think I've built a nice little platform now for next year. I think I've done well. Obviously, my first year on the Challenge Tour, I think I finished 14th. And then to go and finish second the following year, I think that shows I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. And now with this platform I've got now, hopefully finish this season off the way I've just started playing now. And then next year, just build on it from there, really.
And last question from me, what's been your favourite memory of playing darts so far?
I think playing on my first European tour, even though I don't think I did myself justice or anything, but I really enjoyed that. And I remember I went with all the Yorkshire lads. I normally sit on a table with all them, like Darren Johnson, Richie Corner, Chris Quantock and all those. And Darren Johnson had a bit of a run where he beat James Wade that weekend, and I just sat there on the table at the front thinking, I'd love to be back up there again. So now I've got a chance in Maastricht in a few weeks' time, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, all the best for that, and thank you very much for joining us on the podcast this week.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to Ryan for joining us on the podcast. Now let's move on to matters this week, and it's the first staging of the Melbourne Darts Masters, the second of three World Series events taking place in New Zealand and Australia over the next few weeks. The draw, when we're recording this, isn't out yet, but looking at how the one went in Auckland last week, Kyle Anderson beating Corey Cadby, can you see either of those two or even both of them repeating their feat last week in Melbourne?
I mean, it's not like they were handed easy draws. They drew the top two seeds in the first round, which in a way is when you probably do want to draw them, because it's best out of 11 as opposed to best out of 19 or longer in the later rounds. But I don't see why not. Corey Cadby's now beaten Phil Taylor twice from 3 tries in these World Series events. including last year. Kyle Anderson has shown he can beat anyone. He beat Michael Van Goren last year when MVG was playing at his best, throwing in 3 consecutive bullseye finishes on his way to the semifinals in Vienna. So we're talking 2 players who have shown they can beat, if not anyone, almost anyone on any given day. And was it probably a fluke? Yeah. Neither of them have that consistency yet that you'd expect them to be able to duplicate this every tournament. Kyle Anderson's playing very well right now. That's why he won the title in Barnsley at Players' Championship 17. That's why he was able to do that, get through 2 last leg deciders plus a tough match in the first round against Gary Anderson. And Corey Cadby has that A game that he can average over 100 fairly frequently on TV. But they're not yet at that consistent level. Corey Cadby's had some averages under 80 this year on the Australian Tour. I wouldn't expect either of them to duplicate it, but they definitely can, and they're definitely 2 players who are moving in that direction of this becoming a, if not routine thing, a semi-routine thing.
Yes, it's possible they can, but it's probably unlikely. Kyle Anderson was a 50-1 outsider to win in Auckland last week, win the whole thing. Not sure what Corey's odds were, but as just based on that, it's something that we're not expecting to happen again this week. And they've got expectation on their shoulders this week as well. They've been able to do that and get to a final, both of them in a senior TV final for the first time. So they've got expectations on their shoulders now. They're probably thinking, right, if I did it last week, why can't I do it this week? So they've got that to deal with for the first time, going in as 2 players that many players will really know that they can produce that and they can go all the way. So, as I say, it's unlikely, but who knows with the World Series events that we've seen this year, Daryl Gurney getting to a final on his debut and these 2 Australian guys getting to the final in the same event. It's really anything can happen, and with Van Gerwen not there and Gary Anderson going out early last week and Peter Wright going out early last week, really we could see, probably unlikely that we see those 2 get in the final again, but anything really can happen.
Well, before we move on to our last question about the upcoming event in Melbourne next week, this week I should say, we move on to our second interview of the week, and that is with PDC Tour Card holder Ryan Meikle.
Ryan, thank you for joining us on the podcast this week. You're now well into your 2nd year of your tour card on the PDC circuit. How have you found the last 18 months or so of playing in the professional game?
Yeah, well, I've loved every minute, really. I've done a lot better than what I thought I would. And obviously it's really, really tough, but I feel I've improved a lot over the 18 months. So just enjoying it and making the most of it, really.
You won your tour card on the 2nd day of Q School in 2016. It was your first time playing at Q School. What were your expectations going into the event? Just for experience, really. Yeah, I was playing well at the time. I just completed my first year on the youth tour, so I thought I'd go for experience and then hoping in a couple of years' time I'd compete a bit more, but never expected to get through. But that probably helped me relax, and I played well on the day. You mentioned there you played a few events on the development tour the year before. Was it giving those events a go that inspired you to try out for Q School? Yeah,
it was really. I didn't do too bad my first year and qualified for the Worlds, and yeah, I just thought I'd go for it. Really, obviously, growing up, it's a dream to play with the top players, and I was just happy to get through.
Looking back at that day that you did go on and win your tour card, you beat some seasoned campaigners on the way, Kirk Shepherd, Jason Marriott, and then Dennis Smith in the final qualifier. What are your memories from that day when you won your tour card?
Well, it was a long day, very long, but no, I had very long. Nice to play a few of the top players like with Kirk, and I got to the final game, and I was just happy with the points I'd won. Really, I thought that'd be handy points going into the last 2 days, and then against Dennis, I literally didn't miss nothing, and it all literally worked perfectly for me.
What were the emotions like when that final double went in and you beat Dennis and you knew that you had your tour card then?
That was just a bit of a shock, really. I was just so happy to get through. I had a few family members there, and I was relieved nice to turn up on the last 2 days. Now I didn't have to play. I could watch and just relax.
Looking back at your first year on the tour last year, what was the highlight for you? Was it the International Darts Open, getting to the final day in Riesa on the European Tour?
Yeah, that was the main thing. Because obviously the stage experience and the big crowds, and yeah, they're the best weekends I've had on the tour, and they're the ones I try hardest to qualify for.
I'm right in saying I think you were due to face Michael Van Gogh in the last 32 before he pulled out. Was that disappointing not to get the chance to play him on the big stage?
Yeah, I must not. I was gutted. I'd love to play him. I was on the Saturday night, but yeah, I'd rather play him on the Saturday. I think the boy just obviously world number one, and just to say you played him on the stage. But it was also nice to get a boys through, and yeah, get through to the Sunday.
You have played some of the top players right up there, though. I think Gary Anderson, you played in one of your first few events, and you've had a win over Barney, I think, this year. What's it been like going head-to-head with the top players in the world?
Yeah, I mean, the first few months, I was really nervous, the first 3 months, just being around them. And then, but yeah, my first ever Pro Tour game was against Gary Anderson. It was nice to play him, but hopefully that had been a few rounds in more, but no, they're the sort of people when you play on the tour, you want to play against all the best ones, and say you've played them before, and nice to give them a good game as well.
When did it sort of turn around when you went from being nervous to being around them and playing them to getting into that mindset where you're like, maybe you're just another player and I want to beat you and get your scalp?
There's a few months in, really. You settle down, you meet and talk to a lot of them, everyone gets on there, and yeah, and then you slowly notice yourself improving with the standard, and you just relax more. And I just think now it's nice to give them a game, and I always think now that I can beat them, and it's all on the day, really. You never know what's going to happen.
Moving on to this year, you made a good start qualifying for the UK Open for the first time. What was it like playing in a major tournament for the first time over in Minehead back in March?
Yeah, I loved it at Minehead. But I literally didn't win any money qualifying, and in the very last tournament, I just earned enough to sneak in. And yeah, that was a really good weekend down there. And it was nice to get through the first round, and then play the local Justin Pipe, and he played really well against me. But that was nice being on stage too. Good atmosphere down there, and yeah, I'm hoping to get a few more.
In the lead up going into the UK Open, you won your first PDC title on the development tour. Being a player who plays in both the circuits, both the development tour and the Pro Tour, how does it compare playing on the two?
Yeah, to be honest, it's not much different. I mean, the top in that youth, it's surprising how good the standard is. I mean, I've only won one of the tournaments in 2 years. Everyone kind of thinks if you have a tour card that you'd win a lot of them, but still the standard's so high that anyone kind of beat anyone.
Is it difficult as well with the development tour? Obviously, you've got 2 tournaments a day compared to the Pro Tour, where it's just that one each day.
A little bit, yeah. You kind of have to adjust to it a bit, because they can be long days if you do well. But I think because I had the experience of playing on it before I was on the Pro Tour, I was kind of used to it, and yeah, that kind of helped me.
Earlier this month, you qualified for the German Darts Grand Prix, which is taking place next month. How much are you looking forward to that, going over to Germany? Because a lot of the players on the tour at the moment, there this month, really, they haven't really got any darts to play on the circuit.
Yeah, it was really nice because, yeah, like I say, if you didn't, I think I would have been an 8 or 9 week wait before away again. And obviously, yeah, not good weekends in Germany. The crowds are really good over there. They love it. They love their darts over there, and I'm looking forward to just playing on the stage again, and just that feeling again. So I'm really looking forward to that.
You're currently 81st on the order of merit. Is the target for the rest of the year to make sure you finish in that top 64 and keep your tour card? And worst case scenario, if you don't, will you be back at Q School next year?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think I'm too far away from 64th place once all the money comes off what people are protecting. But I could do a really good end of the year, and I might sneak in. But if not, I'll definitely be going back to Q School. And I keep thinking I'm still only 21, so that'll be a good experience if I have to go back. Or we've got the youth tour. If you finish in the top 2, I could get your tour card back like that. But I'm just taking one tournament at a time, really. Just a couple of good runs, and I might sneak up there with it.
You recently signed a deal with Red Dragon as your manufacturer for your darts now. How pleased were you to get that deal, and what did it mean to you to have someone like Red Dragon sign you up?
Yeah, that was really good for me. I've always used the Red Dragon equipment, darts, and yeah, it was a massive bonus for me. And I drove up there to Wales, and I got my new set of darts made, which I'm currently practicing with. And yeah, they're going really well. They're really helpful and supportive, and yeah, one of the biggest darts manufacturers. It's nice knowing you've got their support.
And lastly, you're one of several players from Suffolk or based in Suffolk who are on the tour. Obviously, we've got Peter Wright and Andrew Gilden as well. What's the dart scene like in Suffolk at the moment?
Yeah, it's growing. I mean, when I first got on tour, Carl, there wasn't many, and now there's more and more players giving Key School a go. They all kind of travel around together. And yeah, it's getting bigger, and there seems to be more and more people doing the PDC Challenge Tour and Development Tour. So people like Peter being up there, I think that helps the area.
Well, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, and best of luck for the rest of the year in trying to keep your tour card for next year.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Ryan for dropping in this week. Now, talk about Melbourne next week. A lot of players went out early, obviously, because it's only a 4-round tournament. Obviously, Peter Wright and Gary Anderson both went out in the first round. A few others, Daryl Gurney, Simon Whitlock, went out in the quarterfinals. Do you see any of the players who went out first or second round being able to bounce back and have a good run in Melbourne this week?
If I had to pick one, it's probably the easy answer to do, really, seeing as he's going to be the top seed again, but I'd have to go with Gary Anderson. He was unlucky, really, to come up against Kyle Anderson, who produced one of his best ever performances on the big stage, almost 103 average, to beat him 6-4 in the first round. And Gary played pretty well himself, a 98 average, and he had a 138 finish, I think, in that game as well. So he's probably going into this week thinking, if I can maybe not draw Kyle Anderson or Corey Cadby and draw one of the maybe lesser experienced players on the big stage and who's had experience of getting deep in these TV events now, then he'll probably fancy his chances of getting through that first hurdle and then going through to the next 2 days and having a decent chance of winning it. He's got previous of winning these World Series events. He was the defending champion in Auckland last week, so he knows what it's like to win over in Australasia. So for me, if I had to pick one, it would be the easy answer, really, and I'd go with Gary Anderson to bounce back this week.
I think I agree with you on that. I think Gary Anderson had the most unlucky draw, other than maybe Peter Wright getting Corey Cadby, and he got a Kyle Anderson who was coming in extremely hot on form. And Gary didn't do much wrong in that match. Gary is the master of these World Series events, especially over the last year and a half. He nearly topped the table last year over the course of it, only getting nipped in the final one by Meikle Van Garen. He's been top throughout this year. If he can get a good run in one of these, he'll pretty much assure himself being the top seed at the World Series finals. And you can't expect him to get the same draw again. Now, of course, there is a 1 in 8 chance that he'll get Kyle Anderson again. There's a 1 in 8 chance he'll get Corey Cadby, which means, in essence, there's a 25% chance he's getting one of the finalists in the first round. But if he doesn't, I think he should be able to bounce back. I think he should be able to put on a good run. I think especially when you get to the longer formats, he has the stamina to keep up the performance over 19 or 21 legs. I don't think that Corey Cadby would beat him in a best of 19 like Corey Cadby was able to against Phil Taylor. I could be wrong. But Corey Cadby, he averaged 95 in that match, and that was good enough to beat an indifferent Phil Taylor. I don't think averaging 95, 96 over 19 legs is going to give him much of a chance against Gary Anderson.
Okay, let's move on to our final interview of the week, and it is with the former World Championship finalist, former Players Championship Finals winner, Kevin Painter.
I'm joined today by Kevin Painter. Kevin, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you.
Thank you for agreeing to join us this week, and congrats on your big weekend a couple weekends ago, making it all the way through to the finals at Players Championship 17. Did you enter that day thinking that it could be your day?
Well, you sort of enter every day, every tournament thinking it's going to be your day, but as you know, of late, I haven't been doing particularly well over the last few months, so it was nice to get a good run on the Saturday even,
Now, in the quarterfinals, you played Gerwin Price, and he had a few match darts in the deciding leg, 3 in hand, and missed them. Did you expect that you'd be coming back at that visit?
No, I mean, Gerwin's pretty good at his doubles. His finishing's, probably the best part of his game. It was one of them games where I think it was going leg for leg, and obviously I was on 110 Gerwin's on 40. I thought, well, I just expected him to bang it out, and it's quite nice to see that I got a shot. And fortunately enough, it went in.
Is it easy to stay mentally focused when in a situation like that, when you expect that the match is probably gone?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the better parts of my game, being under pressure. I'd like to think I'm pretty good under pressure. The worst part of my game is maybe the concentration levels, but when you're having a good run in a tournament like that, you've sort of got better game by game, if you like, so, it all sort of falls into place. Yeah, obviously in that situation, it looked like you're going to get beat, and you've just got to hope you get another shot.
Now, at the end of last year, you initially narrowly missed out for qualification for Ali Pali before you got a reprieve when Kyle Anderson withdrew. Were you aware of the qualification scenarios at that time?
A couple of weeks before, I did hear that Kyle was having some problems with his visa card, but I didn't at the time know that it was going to be me going in. I mean, we've got 2 or 3 different ranking tables, etc., as you know, and I didn't really look too much into it. It was only when a couple of people had sort of mentioned it to me that I'd become aware of it, and I thought, well, if it happens, it happens. I didn't expect it to happen, to be honest. I sort of thought, well, Carl would probably get it sorted, but he didn't, and fortunately it was me that was sitting in the 17th place, to go in. So I was quite fortunate, yeah.
Did that make going to Ali Pali make it feel like it was a free ride, or did you still feel pressure to justify getting into the field?
No, in a way, sort of it was a bonus, but once I get on the stage anyway, I've got a job to do, and, I wanted to obviously do my best, and, like you always do when you walk on stage, but, yeah, I know that I was lucky to get the place, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to get myself back in that situation again, and hopefully, I was telling myself, make sure you have a good year next year so you don't have to worry about stuff like that,
Now, speaking of which, you started this year actually fairly strongly in the UK Open qualifiers, made a semi-final the second weekend in Wigan, made it to the top 32 in the UK Open Order of Merit. Did you feel at that time that your game was coming back to top form?
Yeah, I was playing well at the start of the year. It was, I thought, it's always nice to start the year well, and like you say, I've got to had good results in the UK Opens, but I sort of lost my way a bit round about April, May sort of time, and started to have some bad results. I was losing stupid games that I was 4-1 up in, 5-3 up in, and it just sort of had a snowball effect, really. And I just kept losing first round, second round, and just went on a really, really poor run of results. You have to just keep telling yourself, it's going to stop sooner or later, and you are going to have a good run. I know what I'm capable of doing if I can get into a tournament. There's no good keep getting beat first or second round. You don't get a chance to see how well you're playing. So I was a bit puzzled. Practicing's fine, brilliant. That's okay doing that, but until you're actually having a good run in a tournament, you don't know. People say to you how you're playing, you can't really answer because you don't know. But I found out obviously last weekend or weekend before, how well I was playing because once I get past the second round, I was thinking, right, you're in the tournament now. Let's kick on, and I threw some decent darts.
Now, I guess that brings us to the next question. You've said many times in your career that you're a big stage player. So what is it that you find hardest about getting up for and getting through those floor events?
It's just the concentration levels all day, and I just don't seem to be able to get myself... Don't get me wrong, I'm trying, and, I've tried different things to try and help me get through that sort of thing, but I just don't get that same motivation for the big matches, like I do for the big stage games. And in a way, when you're playing on stage and you're in the World Championship, for instance, you know that you're playing at 8 o'clock at night or whatever, so you know how to prepare for all them games or for that game. But when you're playing floor tournaments, you've got all different games going on. There's distractions. You don't know an exact time when you're going to be playing. So, for me, I find that difficult. I've had my moments before. I've won tournaments on the floor before, but I just don't seem to get that same level of concentration going as I do when I'm playing on a stage.
Now, after that run to the final in Barnsley, you're now back right in the thick of the race to qualify for Ali Pali again. I would assume that that's one of your goals for the year. But do you have any other goals for the rest of this season?
Well, we haven't got many more tournaments to go. So, my main aim is to qualify for the Players' Championship at Minehead. And up until last weekend or weekend before, I wasn't in that either. So I think I've virtually put myself in that for a cert. And then finish these next 2 or 3 events we've got, with some good results. And that'll keep me in the World Championship again. I don't want to miss the Worlds. I've been playing in the World Championship since 1994. So... And, nothing worse than sitting at home, I can imagine, watching that, and not being in it. So, I must qualify for that in my mind.
So looking forward, though, beyond that, do you think you can get back into the top 32 or even higher over the next year or so?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the minute, it's quite strange because I'm throwing some of the best darts I've ever thrown. My practice is just great. If I can just have a few more of them days that I had the other week, you can climb up the table. So players have proved that how you can do it, and I see no reason why I can't do it. If I was playing rubbish and off form all the time, I'd say to you, well, that don't look very likely. But I'm playing well, so in my mind, I can. You've got to keep your confidence up, and I felt pretty low. April till. The other weekend, it was only the form I was showing in practice that I thought, well, there can't be too many things wrong. It was just I was having a run of bad results, which, you get.
Now, you mentioned you've been over 20 years in a row to the World Championship now. Many players have come and gone over that time. What do you think it has been that has contributed to your longevity as a professional darts player?
Probably, I'm a pretty sort of determined sort of chap. I don't like losing. I just trying to prove to myself over and over again that I can still do it. And I'd like to think I'm difficult to beat. And as long as I'm winning games, I've got a chance of qualifying. If it comes a time where I'm just getting beat all the time and I just can't compete with people, then I'll stop. I don't want to go for a phase where I just can't win. I'm wasting my time. Because that'll do me no good mentally at all. But as long as I can compete at the top level, I'll carry on trying to do it.
And then there's 2 more quick questions. What would you say up to now has been your highlight in your career?
Well, obviously, winning the TV major I won. A lot of people didn't think I was going to do it. It was nice to do it. There'll be thousands of dart players that will never get that feeling. It's difficult. It's a difficult achievement to do. But apart from that, being a professional dart player for 22 years is something to be proud of. There's not many people that have sort of been around that long at the top of the game. And, I'm proud to say that, it's 22 years and I'm still going at the minute. So I'm quite proud of that.
And finally, and most importantly, a good start to the year, 2 wins in 2 matches. So Ipswich are currently 4th in the table. Do you think they can keep it up and return to the Premier League next year?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I'll say that every year as well. I always hope we have a good season and do well. But it's with the finances the club have got, it's difficult. And Mick McCarthy's having to be pretty shrewd with who he brings in, a lot of loan players and things like that. But we ain't got a bad squad at all, really. I was at Barnsley on Saturday to watch them win, and last season, after going behind, we wouldn't have won that game. So things are looking up at the minute. I know it's only two or three games in, but if we can avoid injuries to key players, I can't see why we can't, at least challenge for it. I don't know about coming in the top 2, but there's always a chance of getting in the playoffs, and then anything can happen then. So I'm very hopeful on that, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care.
Thanks again to Kevin Painter for joining us this week. Now we're going to move on to the BDO. 2 events this past weekend. On Saturday was the Antwerp Masters, and on Sunday was the Antwerp Open. The other Martin Atkins won on Sunday in the Antwerp Masters, beating Roger Jansen 8-4 in the finals, after on the Open on Saturday, Jim Williams defeated world number 6 Ross Montgomery 9-2 in the finals. On the women's side, Deta Hedman won both tournaments. She won on Saturday in the Open, beating Casey Gallagher 7-1. And on Sunday, she beat world number 9 Sharon Prinz 6-3 in the final. Now, I took a look at the world rankings, and it's very tight right around numbers 22 to like 28, 29, and the top 27 or 28 will get in, depending on who the World Masters champion is, and depending also on whether reigning Lakeside runner-up Danny Knoppert's in the top 28. But one of the people who's right there near the cutoff is twice world champion Scott Waits. He's currently in 24th place. Now, he hasn't played as many events, but could we possibly see Scott Waits missing Lakeside this year?
At the moment, he's in a precarious position, and based on the last few years, he's been cutting back on his playing commitments on the BDO circuit. I was having a look earlier. I think 2015 he played in around 19, 20 tournaments. I think that included the World Championship as well. And then 2016 last year cut down to about 14, 13. This year I think he's played in around 10 or 11 so far. So he's looking like he's going to match last year's tally or go a couple more. But he does need a decent run or two, I think, to just make sure that he's in that top 28 or whatever it is to get to Lakeside. And last year it was sort of around this time that he started to pick up a few decent results. I think the last weekend before the cut-off, the British Classic and the British Open, mid-September time, British Classic he got to the last 16 and British Open he got to the semi-finals. So that was a couple of decent runs he had in the last weekend before the cut-off. Hopefully for him he'll be able to get a couple of decent runs before that, so he doesn't have that pressure going into the final weekend of tournaments before the cut-off. But at the moment it does look like he will need a couple of decent results before it all finishes up the season to make sure that he is at Lakeside again in January.
Yeah, and you said it. He has so far 11 events in his ranking that count towards qualification. Of course, that includes a couple events from last year, the World Championships, the World Masters. I think there's one other one. So he hasn't been playing as much, and I think it's the 12 best results that count. So his ranking, his points total can't go down, although his ranking can if people outperform him. So he's going to have a free ride somewhere to get some more points. I think he'll probably be safe, but if he is safe, he'll be just safe. And being just safe isn't that good, because if you get in, well, you need to be top 16 to be seeded. It's not looking like he's going to be seeded right now. And if he drops any further than 24th, even if he gets in, he's going to have to play that preliminary round. Now, that might be good. It might be good to get in that preliminary round, try to get some form against one of the regional qualifiers and get a result under your belt before you go against one of those seeds. But it also can be tough because there's going to be some good players there. There could be Jeff Smith there, who, of course, we know how well he plays at Lakeside. There's a few other players who might get in through the regional qualifiers, and probably Paul Hogan, like he always does, getting through the qualifier to qualify. So even if he gets in, it's going to be a tough run. I think he needs to get one of those results to try to get into the seeds.
Now, one player who won't have to worry about qualifying for Lakeside, she's pretty set to be there in January, and that's Deta Hedman, who won her 16th and 17th titles of the season, winning the Antwerp Open and Masters Ladies events at the weekend, beating Casey Gallagher in the Open final and Sharon Prinz in the Masters final. So Deta did the double in Antwerp. How much longer can she keep up this form, though?
Oh, I mean, if you look back, going back to the last events from 2016 that still count towards qualification for Lakeside next year, so, in the seasonal rankings, she has 17 titles now. Lisa Ashton has 4. And granted, Lisa Ashton doesn't play nearly as many tournaments as Deta Hedman does, but that means Deta is playing everything and winning everything. This is almost Michael Van Gerwen-like return on investment in terms of titles to events played. That's incredible. Now she's getting older. She's into her mid to late 50s now. It's one of these years it's going to start to be a downturn. We thought it was the case earlier this year. She went through a rough patch, but now she's in her last 7 tournaments, she's won 5 of them, and she's playing really well again. How many more years can she really have a chance to win the World Championship? It's tough to say, especially with the number of good players who are coming up, like Fallon Sherritt, Helene de Graaf, Sharon Prinz, who are just going to keep, and Ryan Edwards, who are just going to keep improving, one thinks, Corrine Hammond as well. This might be her last good chance to win the World Championship. But we said that a few years ago, and she's been back since then. I think that, 2 or 3 more years she could still keep this up for, though.
It was mentioned on the broadcast in Auckland that on Sunday it was Phil Taylor's 57th birthday, and that's the same age that Deta Hedman is currently, but there's no signs of her really packing in the darts and retiring. She's been a great ambassador of ladies darts over the years, and as you say, she's the Michael Van Gogh of the ladies game at the moment, picking up all these titles in devastating fashion. And the one which eludes her, of course, is that World Championship. And as the years go on, how many more opportunities is she going to get to get her name on the trophy? I think for her, though, she's got a few more years left in her. I know Phil Taylor's retiring at the end of the year. As I said, they're the same age, but for Phil, he's been playing darts on the circuit for the best part of 30 years. Hasn't really had any years off, whereas Deta, we know she's had spells where she's packed the game in. She hasn't been able to afford it. She hasn't had sponsors, so maybe she hasn't got that amount of fatigue that maybe Phil Taylor has, been at the same age but having played it for much longer. So she's definitely got more years left in her, and hopefully if she can use these successes that she's had this year to go all the way at Lakeside and win the World Championship for the first time. I'm sure, apart from the players that will be playing in the ladies' draw in January and maybe their friends and family, I don't think anyone would begrudge her winning that world title.
Anything else for this week?
Well, just to say to keep tracks on the website we've got running, lovethedartsmag.com, trying to keep that regularly updated with news and other features and stuff. Of course, you can listen to the podcast through our website or download it on iTunes, and we're looking into other podcast apps and other things like that for you guys to download it and listen to it. So if there's any suggestions on that, do get in touch so we can make the podcast as accessible as possible.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening this week. For Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt, and we will see you guys next week.